Jimmy Fallon frozen when Dolly Parton suddenly stopped singing. After spotting this familiar face, Dolly Parton stopped mid-song. Not at the end of a verse, not after the chorus. Mid-lyric, mid-breath, her voice simply stopped. 300 people in Studio 6B went completely silent. Jimmy Fallon, standing 3 feet from her, didn't move. Something was wrong. Or something was right. Nobody in that room understood which. It was a Tuesday evening in March 2024, and The Tonight Show had just welcomed Dolly Parton for what the producers were billing as a casual reunion performance, her third appearance on the show in 4 years. The audience had come from across the country. A woman in row 7 had driven 11 hours from Tennessee. A retired school teacher in the 5th row had saved for 3 months to buy her ticket. They had all come to hear the voice. They had come for the songs they knew by heart. By the time the cameras rolled and the house lights dimmed, everything was flowing perfectly. The band was warm. Dolly was radiant. The first song had already drawn a standing ovation before it finished. Everything was right. Everything was flowing. Then the second song began. It was not loud, not polished with performance energy, just singing. The real kind. The kind Dolly Parton did when she forgot anyone was watching. She moved to the edge of the stage, the way she sometimes did when a song pulled her somewhere else entirely, and that is when her eyes found the 3rd row. A woman was sitting there, small, white-haired. Hands clasped in her lap like someone in a church pew, perfectly still, watching with the kind of quiet that only comes from a very long wait finally ending. Dolly's voice caught. Her fingers tightened around the microphone. Her head tilted a fraction of an inch to the left, the way a person tilts their head when they are trying to decide whether something is real. Her free hand rose slowly to her chest. Jimmy took a step toward her. "Dolly, you all right?" The entire studio froze. For a moment, the wrong assumptions flew through every mind in that room. Was she unwell? Had something happened? She was 78. Was she dizzy? Had the lights gotten to her? 300 people held their breath. The band went quiet, one instrument at a time, the drummer last, his stick still hovering above the snare. The Tonight Show's segment producer, standing in the wings, later said she'd worked in television for 26 years and never seen anything like what happened in that studio in the next 4 minutes. Dolly Parton's voice, barely above a whisper, but caught perfectly by her microphone, said one word: Cecilia. To understand what happened next, you need to understand what happened in 1967. Dolly Parton wasn't always Dolly Parton, the rhinestone queen, the icon, the legend of 1,000 songs. In September 1967, she was 21 years old, and she was afraid. Not a failure. She had always been too stubborn for that. But of the specific loneliness that comes when you have moved somewhere enormous and the city has not yet decided to love you back. She had been in Nashville for 3 years by then, writing songs in a rented room, singing demos for other people's records, waiting for the door that everybody said was going to open. Some weeks it felt very close. Most weeks it did not feel close at all. On a Thursday evening, she drove 40 minutes outside the city to play a small roadhouse in Hendersonville. Maybe 90 seats, a plywood stage no higher than a stack of amp cases, a single spotlight that buzzed like a trapped insect. She remembers it was raining that night. She remembers there was no green room, just a storage closet that smelled of sawdust and cigarette smoke. And she sat in there alone before the set and wondered quietly whether any of this was ever going to amount to anything. The show was half full. She played for 55 minutes to an audience that was mostly indifferent, mostly talking, mostly there for the beer and the company, and not particularly for her. But in the second row, one woman was different. Her name was Cecilia Marsh. She was 34 years old, a music teacher at a middle school in Hendersonville, and she had driven out alone on a school night because she had read a small notice in a local music circular about a girl from Sevierville who wrote her own songs. None of Cecilia's friends had wanted to come. They didn't understand why she cared. She came alone because she always came alone for the things that mattered to her. She had dark eyes and a very still way of listening that Dolly noticed from the stage immediately. Most audiences move, they shift, they sip drinks, they lean to whisper. Cecilia Marsh sat like someone who understood that attention was a form of respect, and she gave every last bit of hers to every single song. After the show, while Dolly was winding her microphone cable at the edge of the stage, Cecilia walked up. She did not gush. She did not ask for an autograph. She said, simply and with complete certainty, "You wrote all of those songs yourself." It was not a question. Dolly said yes. Cecilia said, "Then, you don't need luck. You just need time." They sat at the edge of the stage for 40 minutes after the Roadhouse had half emptied, and they talked about music the way two people talk when they have both been waiting their whole lives to have exactly that conversation. Cecilia taught her students music theory by having them find the emotional truth in a lyric first, the technical structure second. She believed, and said so without embarrassment, that a person who truly understood what they were trying to say would always find the way to say it. That was the whole of music education, in her view. Everything else was mechanics. Before she left, she pressed something into Dolly's hand. A small notebook, one of the kind she gave her students, pale blue cover, spiral bound. She had written something on the first page in her careful schoolteacher's handwriting, for the girl who already knows what she's saying. Just keep saying it. Dolly thanked her. She meant it in the ordinary way people mean thank you after a kind gesture. She did not yet know that she would keep that notebook for 57 years. Fame came the way it always does, not like a door opening, but like a current. The records came, and then the television came, and then the touring came, and then there was no Thursday night in Hendersonville anymore, no storage closet before the show, no woman in the second row with dark eyes who came alone on school nights. Fame is the force that carries people away from things they love. It carried Dolly Parton away from Cecilia Marsh gently, the way rivers move things, without intention and without apology. They exchanged a handful of letters over the years, and then the letters thinned, and then the years themselves thickened around the distance, until the distance was all that remained. Cecilia taught music at that same middle school for 31 years. She retired quietly. She never married. Her students came back to visit her long after they graduated, and she always remembered their names and the songs they had struggled with. She had kept the newspaper clippings, all of them, every record, every award. She had never told anyone about the Thursday night in Hendersonville because she did not believe it was her story to tell. In January of this year, her niece had found her sitting at her kitchen table in the early morning, the pale blue notebook open in front of her, reading the inscription she herself had written in 1967. Stage 4, the doctors had said. 6 months, maybe less. Her niece helped her write the letter to Dolly Parton's management company. Cecilia had not wanted to do it at first. She did not want to be a dying woman asking for something from a famous person. Her niece convinced her that this was not what it was. The response came within 24 hours. Behind the scenes, Dolly Parton had made a decision that defied every producer's expectation. She had asked the Tonight Show team to seat Cecilia Marsh in the third row and to tell no one, not the producers, not the floor director, not Jimmy Fallon, only that a specific guest would be in the audience that evening. She had chosen the song herself, The first one she had ever played for Cecilia, at a half-empty roadhouse in Hendersonville on a rainy Thursday night in September 1967. She wanted Cecilia to hear it before she walked on stage. She wanted the song to find her first. But this is the moment no one in the studio and no one watching at home ever saw coming. Standing at the edge of the stage, her hand on her chest, Dolly Parton looked at Cecilia Marsh for the first time in 57 years and reached into the pocket of her white rhinestone jacket. She pulled out a small notebook, pale blue cover, spiral bound. She had folded it carefully, the way you fold something that has been folded for 57 years, and it showed all of that time in every crease. She stepped down off the stage. The director did not cut to commercial. The cameraman closest to the stage did not look away. Questlove stood up from behind his drum kit and set his sticks down on the snare without a sound. Dolly Parton crossed the floor of Studio 6B and crouched down at the end of the third row, and she held out the notebook to the woman who was already crying, and she said, quietly into the microphone that was still clipped to her collar, "You kept me going that night." I don't think you ever knew that. Cecilia Marsh shook her head slowly. Her hands were shaking when she took the notebook. She looked down at her own handwriting inside the cover. 57 years of a careful schoolteacher's words. "I was just a music teacher," she said. Dolly covered her hands with both of hers. "You were the first person who ever told me I already knew what I was saying." A long silence. "Why didn't you tell me you were sick?" Dolly said. Cecilia looked up at her. "Because I didn't want you to come out of pity. I wanted to hear you sing one more time." Dolly stood. She turned back toward the stage. She looked at the band, and the band looked at her, and without a word she walked back to the microphone and began the song again from the beginning. Not for the cameras, for the woman in the third row. The standing ovation started somewhere in the middle of the studio, 3 rows back from where Cecilia was sitting, and it moved outward across the room the way a wave moves, unstoppably, from a single point of origin, until there was no one left sitting except Cecilia Marsh herself, who sat with the pale blue notebook pressed to her chest and her eyes closed and her lips moving, just barely, to words she had never forgotten. Jimmy Fallon climbed over his desk. He walked to the edge of the stage and knelt on the top step, his elbows on his knees, and watched. He did not speak for a long time. "Folks," he said finally, "I think we need to let this happen. Share and subscribe. Make sure this story is never forgotten." Cecilia Marsh passed away 11 weeks later, on a Tuesday morning in April. Dolly Parton sat in the 4th row at the service in Hendersonville, not on the stage, not at the podium, just sitting in a pew with her hands folded in her lap, the way Cecilia had always sat when she was listening to something she wanted to hear fully. The pale blue notebook was framed and placed in the entryway of the middle school where Cecilia had taught for 31 years. It hangs there now, beside the door she walked through every morning for 3 decades, in a building full of children learning to find what they are trying to say. Some songs wait a lifetime for the right room to hear them in.